Hello again. A warm welcome back to Heroes Behind the Badge, brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge. I'm your host, Dennis Collins, joined by Bill Erfurth and Craig Floyd. In part one of our conversation with Les Vitale, we heard the devastating story of his brother Harold, a dedicated 14-year veteran of the Saugus Police Department, whose life was tragically cut short on June 18, 1985, when a 19-year-old suspect trapped his arm in a car window and dragged him to his death. We learned how the justice system failed the Vitale family when Harold's killer received only a manslaughter conviction and served less than 10 years in prison. But today, we're turning to a different chapter in their story, one of healing, purpose, and legacy. Les is about to share how a powerful experience at National Police Week in Washington, D.C. became the catalyst for an extraordinary family mission that has now spanned nearly 4 decades. You'll hear how the Vitale family has raised over $1 million through their Memorial Foundation and supported countless families of fallen officers, and also ensured that Harold's sacrifice and the sacrifices of other officers are never forgotten. This is a story about transforming grief into purpose and about what it truly means to live with Vitale Pride. Let's rejoin our conversation with Les Vitale.
And let's talk about the good part of the story, though. It started maybe, I'm thinking, 1986 during National Police Week. I believe your family came to Washington, D.C. to honor the memory of Harold, to honor all the fallen officers that were being paid tribute to during National Police Week. Tell me about that. Was that maybe the seed that started you on this very positive journey that you've been on ever since?
It was definitely the seed. I can still recall landing in D.C., coming off the plane, and we were told when we signed up, all 13 of us went. When we signed up, we got off the plane. What we did not expect at the airport was full dress police uniforms formed a line from coming off the plane, off the gate, to buses that were waiting for us, because we were deer in the headlights. We had no idea we were going to rent a car, but we kept being told by the Concerns of Police Survivors group, which had reached out to us, just show up, get off the plane, and everything will be taken care of. We didn't really understand what that meant, and we're figuring we got to go get luggage at the luggage carousel, etc. They told us to go straight to the buses. We had an escort on each arm on both sides, my entire family. It was just, I still feel it right now. The emotion, how impressed we were that somebody cared. And it was like angels came down and lifted us up by the arms and, walked us out of the airport to the buses. And they said, "We have your luggage. Your luggage will follow you and it'll be there in the hotel." When we got to the hotel and checked in, Susie Sawyer, executive director of Concerns of Police Survivors, was there. And there was a lot of us. And we were the largest family, I guess, that had showed up, had registered to sign up. And when we walked in as a group. And I can still see it and feel it. The registration team was there. And Susie Sawyer said, "Holy shit, that must be the Vitales." And we're looking around like, what? So she came around the table. She hugged every one of us. And she goes, "Oh, my God, this is the Boston family. And welcome to D.C. And we're like, "What?" She says, "Your registration's all set." The luggage came in. We had escorts to the reception desk, up to our rooms. Everything was taken care of. They gave us an itinerary. From that moment, that week, everything was taken care of. Everywhere we went was special. And my brothers and I sat back, and my sisters, and we're like, how does this happen? The orchestration to pull this off is incredible. And then we were so moved by it as we sat around and we went to the vigil and placing the rose in the shield. And, we lived through all that emotion and trauma. But every time we had a chance to sit back and talk as a family about what we were going through, we talked about organizations like this. People need to understand are so valuable to a person who's a victim or a survivor of anything. And whether it's people stricken with cancer or people, suffer the loss of a loved one from a murder or whatever, who's going to pick you up and who's going to show you the way, because you're really not capable at that point mentally and emotionally of doing it. That experience, after we get back, we sat around and we talked about, we need to do something to give back, and we should do it in Harold's name. My sister-in-law, Eileen, was part of the inspiration of that. So difficult for her with her kids, her young kids there. And we talked to her constantly about how was she doing and what did she want. And it was clear to us, crystal clear, that we could do something. We could turn this around and take something so negative and try to do something somewhat positive as a source of healing. And when we started to just brainstorm it, and when we went back, we talked to friends back home, and friends had suggested to us different things we could do. Well, wow, why don't you run a road race? And why don't you do all these things? They were like, well, wait a minute, we're the victims, we're the family, and that's a lot of work. But it didn't take us long to figure out that the work was worth the effort. That if we didn't do the work, it sort of occurred to us that nobody else might do the work, and that how do we always remember Harold and make sure he's never forgotten? We have to take some of the responsibility for that. And we created, as Craig knows, he was been involved with this, we decided to create, we ran a road race, and then that was successful. And then we ran a golf tournament because my sister-in-law, Eileen, had participated in one as a volunteer for another line of duty death. And she was so impressed by what they did that they raised money. And then they gave the money back to people that needed it. So we just thought maybe we could do this too. And that's where the idea, the inspiration was born. And then lo and behold, the town stepped up and decided they were going to build a memorial to Harold, which, Craig, you were a part of. That when that happened, we sat back as a family and we just said, you know what? We did the right thing. We can never forget. From this point forward, we will do everything we can every year around his anniversary to never, ever forget.
So, Les, I just want to jump in and kind of revisit what you just said about, arriving at Reagan International Airport there. There is a literal sea of cops, and they're all in their dress uniforms. They're standing at the gate as you exit the plane, and they just line the airport. And when you go outside, there is bus after bus after bus, and there's thousands, I don't know about thousands, but there's hundreds of motorcycle cops, and maybe thousands. It's just endless. As far as the eye can see are motorcycle cops. And you all get on these buses, and the motorcycle cops escort you to the hotels. It's one of the most awe-inspiring and inspirational things that I've ever been a part of. And, we were doing a documentary film called Heroes Behind the Badge that followed some of these families, and we followed them off the airplane, and they experienced precisely what you were just discussing. And then it goes to all of the events at the National Law Enforcement Memorial and all of the things that Craig and his team at the memorial did. And I want to ask you this question. It up until that point in time, and maybe even since then, has there ever been something that just absolutely blew you away like that?
Never.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
Never. Watching the World Trade Center, watching the rally of the American people and the first responders, was Police Week on steroids. It's to watch how people came from everywhere, uniformed officers, police, fire, that were alive, to reach out to the people, to the victims, to the families, to try to find a way to provide some counseling, some courage, a shoulder to lean on. It's the most powerful thing that I've ever experienced. in my life. It's just, it's like yesterday. I walked off that plane and, I still can see my sister-in-law ahead of us with her young kids in tow. And I've got I have a young daughter at the time who was a baby. She's an infant. So we have a carriage and, there we are. There's 13 of us and they had us all figured out. It's like, how did they know when we get off the plane that it was us and who we were? It wasn't a chartered plane with all kinds of survivors on it. It was a plane out of Boston Logan International Airport that somehow they figured out we were the ones and what flight it was, and they were going to be there. And it was amazing. As we're walking through, other people from other parts of the country coming off on different airlines, coming out, and that wall right through Reagan, all the way out to the sidewalk, was a wall of safety and security. We felt like there were loving arms around us all. It was just indescribable.
Yeah, it's just so awe-inspiring and amazing. And Craig knows this story, and as much as it touched and changed you by experiencing that, I had gotten to a point in my law enforcement career where I was just completely burnt out. I was done. I hated everything. I hated the job. My whole mentality was wrong. And I went to the memorial for the first time during police week. And I was just so touched and so in awe of what went on. And you've got 40,000 cops from all over the United States and everybody, the honor and the memorial, the memories. And it was just, that changed my whole career after that. It was just amazing.
I remember you told me, Bill, once that, when you went to Washington and were surrounded by tens of thousands of other law enforcement professionals and met the surviving family members of the fallen, you said it reminded you of why you became a cop. These are the best of the best in the profession, the people that care enough every year to come to Washington, D.C., to be part of National Police Week, to show their support for the surviving family members and colleagues of officers killed in the line of duty. And I've never forgotten that. I mean, I realized when you sat down and told me that here you are, a grizzled old cop that's tougher than most, and yet you had a softer side when you came to Police Week. You realized that this is why I became a police officer, and it helped you, because we've had other interviews on this podcast where people have told us about the traumatic events that every officer goes through in their careers and how it hardens them and makes them, in a sense, uncaring and empathetic.
Right.
Because it can't appreciate, a feeling for others at that moment in time because of all the terrible things they've experienced in their career. So Police Week does make a difference for the family as well as for the officers. And I would encourage any officer, any family member of the fallen, any citizen supporter, if you've never been to Washington, D.C. for National Police Week, you need to go at least once and experience it, because it's going to have a positive impact on you and your life. And Les, every year, this past August, I attended your golf tournament that you put on every year to help raise money for Concerns of Police Survivors, for the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund, even for Citizens Behind the Badge. You've been very generous to us as well. And this was the 30th year that golf tournament went on. And you all had, I don't know how many dozens of surviving family members there, not just of Harold Vitale, but of 8 or 9 other fallen heroes that you honor each year. It's always different. Unfortunately, there seems to always be a local death or two that you bring their families to your event to let them know that you care about them and that we'll never forget. Tell us about that experience. Johnny Castro was there this year, a Philadelphia officer who actually did a portrait of Harold and many other officers. And I think we have a copy of that we'll show with this podcast. But tell me what that golf tournament has meant and being able to bring these other surviving family members together.
Yeah, sure. I need to go back to the beginning and what was the inspiration and motivation to start. I talked to a few of you folks before we started this interview. Some of us are golfers. And several of my brothers are. But my sister-in-law had gone to a line of duty death memorial golf tournament as a volunteer. She was getting very involved with cops. She joined the Massachusetts chapter. She was on their board. She stayed very connected to the national scene with Susie Sawyer and the team. And she started to see all these different events and activities that she got involved with, and she continued to stay involved with for quite some time. And I think she realized that those were a source of healing for her. And when she came back from one of the tournaments, she talked about what a great time that she had. And we could see that she was happy, which is what we wanted. And she knew we were golfers. And, she kind of ran up the flagpole and said, we've been thinking about doing things and giving back and helping out like Susie and Concerns of Police Survivors. You guys golf. What do you think about running a golf tournament? So we sat around and we said, you know what, we probably could do it. So I think it was 1993 or 4. We did a road race for 1 or 2 years. Those were pretty good. We raised a few $1,000. We gave out scholarship money with it. And then we did the golf tournament. But we talked about, if we do this, why are we doing it? And what are we going to do if we have any success with it? So we talked about, we wanted to be financially successful because we wanted to give back so other people could have the experience that we had, because it takes money. It costs money. And we thought about how much the cost and consequence of the undertaking the police week must be. How does all this happen? So if we could raise a few bucks and give it back as our thanks, then that would be great. So we launched it. We have a lot of buddies, a lot of friends. My brother Dick and I, as Craig knows, have been in a successful business for a while. We had a lot of clients. And once we pulled it together, they knew our story. They all signed on and said, we'd love to help you out. And all of a sudden, the golf tournament was born. So the first year we did it, we didn't charge a lot of money and we were sold out. And then somehow, some way, we raised a couple of bucks and we gave out a couple of scholarships, a couple of $1,000s. So
high school students, right?
High school students. 1992, 93, I think was the inaugural. And I think we gave out two $250 scholarships with some of the net proceeds. The next year we did it, we probably doubled what we did. And after 4 or 5 years, we raised the scholarships to $500. And then we added a couple. We had a couple of primary schools, my brothers and my sisters all went to, and then a local school in the Saugus area. So we added schools, we added dollar value. In our history, we've given out, I don't have the exact number, but it's close to 200 scholarships over all these years, totaling over $200,000. And the scholarships now, last year, I think we gave out 6 scholarships of $1,000 each. Some years it's been as many as 7, probably no less than 5. And then we turn around and we support Concerns of Police Survivors. We can support the National Law Enforcement Officer Memorial and other organizations that are for police. And the tournament has become a source of healing on it, because as I say to people, you never overcome this. I told you earlier, I'm telling the story of June 18th, 1985, like it was yesterday. It's that vivid. So you never forget that. But how do you overcome it? How do you heal? How do you deal with the emotion? Doing something positive has been the source of that healing, of that solution. So we've done an unbelievable job at the golf tournament, to the point that we've raised well over $1 million. We've given out, God, $600,000 or $700,000 over the years. I mean, some of the things we do, we scratch our head and we say, how did we do this long and this well? But we have a village of people that apparently thought about and cared about Vitale Pride, which I know would make my brother Harold proud, is that, we wanted to carry on and do it with a sense of pride and a sense of purpose. And when we do it and we touch other people, whether it was at the golf tournament and Johnny Castro painted the portraits and 8 or 9 other families came and we gave them portraits of their loved ones. What that feels like for my sister-in-law, for myself, for my brothers, feels so good. to see the joy in their face. And we know that they hurt like we hurt, but you realize that they need it because nobody should forget their loved one. And that night in August, we got a chance to remember 9 families, and the room stood up and gave a standing ovation to every one of those surviving families. You know, I still get goosebumps when that happens. And it's an awesome thing. In every one of those families, usually when an officer goes down the line of duty, there's usually a memorial fund that's set up. Every time it happens, our memorial fund makes a donation to the family, a private donation, and lets them know and understand we stood in their shoes. We're here to help. Call us if you need us. And those people have become, from the Massachusetts area in particular, have become our friends. And they attend the tournament. And it's gotten, every now and then we think it could have it end, a shelf life ending. It continues on. And it's mind blowing.
I'm going to turn things over to Bill for closing comments, but I'll share one last story. Les and his family helped organize a run from Boston to Washington, D.C. when we were raising money to build the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial. And we called it the East Coast Memorial Run. These were police officers, surviving family members of officers who died, other supporters, who basically one by one would run 6-7 miles and then trade off to the next guy or gal. And then they'd run, and they ran 300 miles to Washington, D.C. And the other family that I'll never forget that was involved in that was the Griffiths family. They were honoring their brother, Sherman Griffiths, who was killed in the line of duty in 1988 in a drug raid. 2 tributes came about for those 2 fallen officers. They raised $60,000 to build the memorial during that run. But then about 5 years after Sherman Griffith's death, 4 of his brothers who were in other careers in the middle of their lives gave up their other careers and became Boston police officers. So they could carry on the service that Sherman was doing. And unfortunately, his service was cut short. So they wanted to carry on Sherman's service. And that was one of the greatest tributes I've ever heard of for a fallen officer. I can't imagine a greater tribute. And then the Vitale family. Here we are 40 years after Harold's death, and we're still telling the story of Harold Vitale, not just how he died, but how he lived, who he was in life, the people he touched. And I think that's an incredible story, an incredible tribute to a fallen hero. And that's why I was so pleased that you joined us here today, Les, to help us better understand who Harold was and what you and your family have done to keep his memory alive. I consider that to be a real hero behind the badge, and I thank you for joining us here today.
Well, it's been an honor for me, and I can't thank you enough for reaching out and giving me this opportunity. As I said before, it's something that I never want to forget. Harold's, I've got his portrait probably hanging, he was 42 at the time. I was, 10, 11 years younger, and I was a deer in the headlights and, my big brother. And it's one of those things that as I learned how to talk about him, the sense of pride came out, and I began to welcome the opportunity to tell the story. So the story of Artorias, we've had this, Greg has all of our paraphernalia. It's our logo, and people will look at it and say, what is that? And that's the Q. And I wear these shirts and these hats everywhere I go. And it's amazing to me because a member that was on our golf committee board said, keep the logo simple. Just have it be Artorias. It had a police shield around it. And he said, the statue is just spectacular, and you want people to kind of be struck by it and make them ask you what it is. And that was the best advice we got. And every time I wear one of these shirts and these hats, somebody will say to me, where is that golf course? Where is that? And what is that? And then I get to tell the story. And I do it with a great sense of pride and Vitale Pride. And I know that every time I do it, I know that Harold's looking down and he's pretty happy with what his kid brothers and sisters all did.
So, Les, one last thing. Would you share a website that people can check into your foundation? And thanks for sharing the story. Give that website, and we're going to let Dennis take this out.
Absolutely. So it's vitalememorialfund.org. And that's what it is. It's short and sweet, pretty simple. And there's some pictures of some of the road races and the golf tournaments, and certainly stories about my brother. And one other thing, I guess, while we're at that, every year, if we're honoring another officer or officers, we don't update the website often, but every year there is a line of duty death that's local and near and dear to our heart. We post that story on our website, and we usually will make a donation or create a linkage to that family's cause. So the Boston Marathon bombing being a case in point, years ago, Sean Collier, the MIT officer who was killed during that bombing, Sean's family has been to our tournament. We've honored them. And we had a linkage on our site to their site. They have now gone on and created their own memorial fund, doing an unbelievable, amazing job. And we've become friends with their family. So it's a community we all say as survivors you don't really want to be part of, but you'll never find a community of survivors stronger than law enforcement survivors or first responder survivors. They're just as tight can be. And that's something that we're really proud of. And these folks deserve to be honored and remembered and never forgotten. And we never will.
Les, what can I say that you haven't said except thank you? Thank you for sharing this amazing story about your brother, Harold. You and your family are truly Vitale proud, Vitale strong. We rarely get to hear what happens to the families of line of duty deaths. We hear about the officer, obviously the trials and all that gets a lot of publicity, but we don't hear what the family goes through. And I don't know that you could have done a better job of vividly describing from a family member's point of view how it affects everybody. It's not just the officer and his immediate family. It's the entire family. And we rarely see the dedication that you and your family devote to the memory of your brother. I'm sure he is proud of you. We are thankful and grateful to you to share this. It's not always easy, but you've given us insights that we couldn't have had because none of us have ever had this happen to us directly. You and your family have created an amazing legacy to honor your hero, Harold. So thanks to you and your family for bringing this story.
Thank you for Heroes Behind the Badge and everything you folks continue to do because it's going to take a village, and it takes CBB, and it takes the National Law Enforcement Memorial, and it takes Concerns of Police Survivors. It takes all of the organizations that rally and make sure that the world knows you should never forget. And
well, as you know, that's our mission, and we'll never forget. We'll never forget. So this podcast that you've been listening to, I hope you liked it. It's brought to you by Citizens Behind the Badge. That is the leading voice of the American people in support of the men and women of law enforcement. Now, you might like to find out how you can join hundreds of thousands of Americans already supporting our law enforcement. Here's a quick and easy way. Citizensbehindthebadge.org. Citizensbehindthebadge.org. Okay? Join the hundreds of thousands of people who are already involved. A story like we just heard from Les today should give you any number of reasons to get involved. So also, I got to remind you, don't forget, hit follow, subscribe, or like us, or all three on whatever app you use to view this podcast. You'll be the first to know about our next new episodes. We'll be back soon with more stories on Heroes Behind the Badge. Stay tuned for new episodes coming soon. Heroes Behind the Badge.